Yes. All right.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here.
So thank you for joining us. I wish we were gathering under better circumstances. U.S. sanctions in Venezuela and Cuba are currently fueling the worst migration crisis we've ever seen. Over 60 million people have fled their homes in search of relief, and for many more, this relief did not come soon enough. Sanctions have killed tens of thousands of everyday people in Cuba and Venezuela, and conditions only get worse. With U.S. sanctions, companies are fined, intimidated, and harassed if they choose to do business with targeted countries, and this is making it impossible for people to get basic human needs like food, medicine, and fuel. We come together in a critical moment. We finally have a chance to change this inhumane policy. Members of Congress are gathering signatures on a letter to the Biden administration calling for an end to these policies. Policies that have been internationally condemned, that have been ruled illegal by the United Nations, and policies that will provide relief during a migration crisis. Congressman McGovern is missing his opportunity, and he has not signed this letter. His office knows that we're here today. We have been emailing with them all week, and while no one committed to being here with us, we gave them a way to reach us, and we hope that they contact us.
Pathetic.
Woo! Shameful.
The fact that he is not signed is also just confusing.
He's a coward.
The Anti-Imperialist Action Committee has been in conversation and in protest with the congressman on the issue of U.S. sanctions on Venezuela for years. After a sustained pressure campaign, the congressman came out with the strongest congressional stance opposing sanctions ever, according to some policy experts. Representative McGovern wrote to President Biden just about 2 years ago to date and said, quote, "While U.S. officials debate the sanctions policy in Washington, for the people of Venezuela, the ongoing crisis is a life and death matter. I have never believed that sanctions should be used to punish whole populations for the actions of their leaders or bludgeon an adversary into submission. I believe sanctions like those the previous administration imposed on Venezuela are both misguided and immoral." And we applaud his leadership when he said this in the face of U.S.'s endless imperialist policies. And since this letter was published, we've continued to keep the pressure on. We met with him in January and asked him to do more. We loved this 2021 letter to President Biden, but where was the support of his colleagues? Couldn't he have invited them to sign on too? Couldn't he introduce some legislation? Couldn't he do anything more that would make an impact? And he told us that yes, he could, and now is the time. He expressed to us a deep sense of urgency, especially with the migration crisis.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And he told us what we needed to do was mobilize our friends in other districts. He needed his colleagues to hear support from their constituents. So he told us to get that grassroots support. All while this is happening, the past few years, the sanctions have continued to kill thousands of people. But we did what he asked, and we have been reaching out to our networks for months, trying to get our friends to meet with their representatives to discuss this crucial issue. We spoke with Congressman McGovern just last Friday, and he doubled down on his commitment to do everything in his power to stop sanctions. And then we come to this week. There is a perfect opportunity to support ending sanctions in both Cuba and Venezuela. This is very much in line with the policy he's shared with us. His colleagues are asking him to sign, and he has not taken action. He has not signed this letter calling for an end to these sanctions after telling us for years he's committed to stopping endless and needless deaths in Venezuela. Again, this is confusing, and it's also inexcusable. We are outside Congressman McGovern's office imploring him to do what is right and sign this letter. Here with us today are a number of people who have experienced the impact of these sanctions firsthand, people whose families are in Cuba and Venezuela, people who have traveled to Cuba, and people who have been doing this advocacy work for years. Before we get started with other speakers, I want to remind people to please sign in. This work is far from over, and we'd love to stay in touch with next steps. Please also scan, we have a QR code with an email template, so you can send Congressman McGovern an email tonight asking him to support the letter, and also tweet at him if you have a Twitter. His constituents are out here, and we are waiting for him to make the right choice, and we need him to know it. And with that, I will hand it over to Hector.
Yay!
Check, check. Thank you, Miranda. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Thank you all for being here today. My name is Hector Figarela. I'm an organizer with the Anti-Imperialist Action Committee. I'm a Venezuelan American. I've been living in Western Massachusetts for a very long time. We're here today to demand and to ask Congressman McGovern to do the right thing.
Yes.
Do the right thing, Congressman.
All right.
Sign the letter, Congressman, please.
Show up.
You have told us over and over again, meeting after meeting, that you care about these issues, that you care about the people of Cuba, that you care about the people of Venezuela, that you have said it yourself. Sanctions are a form of punishment, collective punishment. You said it in your first letter. Stop using the Venezuelan people as a bargaining chip. This is a life and death issue. People are dying. Every day people are dying. This letter addresses the migration issue. There has been unprecedented exodus out of Cuba because people are hungry. People are leaving because they're suffering. There are Venezuelans scattered all over the world because they can't survive in Venezuela. They cannot make a living in Venezuela because of the sanctions. No one wants to leave their homeland. They want to stay home with their families. But they have to leave. They have to leave because they have to feed their families. 40,000 people a year. 40,000 people a year are dying, Congressman. And we know you know this. You know, and we know that you care about them.
Show
So
up.
do the right thing and show up
Show
and
up.
sign the letter. Tell President Biden to lift the sanctions. By lifting the sanctions, this would address the migration issue. People will stop leaving. Border states will see less migrants. Sanctuary cities will see less migrants because it's putting a stress on local governments. 40,000 people a year. I lost my father in 2017 to a blood clot. A blood clot that developed in his heart. And there was no medicine. There was no anticoagulants. We couldn't find them. And he died. He died in a hospital bed because he couldn't find something that all of us could walk down to CVS and get a prescription for it.
All right.
Okay? Preventable deaths. I lost an uncle because he couldn't find medication for a condition. I lost an aunt to COVID because of the lack of vaccines. People have died in my family from diabetes. I have a cousin who's 2 years old with a heart condition. He needs a surgery, and he can't get this in Venezuela. A surgery that before the sanctions, the Venezuelan government could afford to pay for. To send his children overseas and get these surgeries. That can no longer be done because of the sanctions. The sanctions have become a tool of war. It's called a hybrid war. It's a new way of waging warfare, and nobody knows about it. So we're here to tell people, tell the world that sanctions kill.
Sanctions kill.
Lift the sanctions.
Lift the sanctions.
Sign the letter, Congressman.
Sign the letter. Show up.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Good afternoon. Hello. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. I'm Gloria Caballero Roca. I live in Holyoke. I am Cuban American, and I've lived here since 1997. I've lived here since 1997. And ever since I've lived here, I've always had to send money to my family. Not through the United States, but through Canada. Not through the United States, but through friends. I'm begging people to bring things down to Cuba. My mom, I just came back from Cuba after 5 years of not being able to travel there. My mom wanted me to bring her bread. Bread. Not a pair of shoes, not a purse, bread. And this is because this country, which is an imperialist country, which is a neo-colonial country, which is a criminal country, will not lift the embargo because of their greed. They want more, and they want to kill the people. Politicians understand each other, but at the end of the day, it is a fight between two elephants, and we are the grass under their feet. The people united will never be defeated because this is a show. This shows me that in the United States there are people that care for what's happening in Cuba and what's happening in Venezuela. And it is time for us to demand this person, McGovern, to stop being a coward. To start being a man of principles. And to start signing these letters because he knows people are dying. He knows that people need freedom. And he knows that those countries are not colonies. And that's why people demand that he stop being a hypocrite. 2 years ago, he showed me a picture of him standing with Fidel Castro, and he was so happy, he was so proud of it. Where is his pride right now when people need him to sign this letter? Where is his manhood? Where is his humanity? Where is it when people are dying in Venezuela and in Cuba and leaving their country? Over 300,000 Cubans have left Cuba over the past 2 years, and millions are crossing the border in Venezuela and still dying. This is what happens when we have a fascist government where corporations and politicians go to bed and they don't care about the people, they just want more, and this is greed. And we need to educate the people. And don't think that misery is not going to come to the United States, because life is a boomerang and it's a roller coaster. Stand with us, with people of Cuba, with the people of Venezuela and Iran, with the people of the world, and save the earth. It is time for us to stand for our rights. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. My God, be a man of principles. Thank you.
All right.
Hello? Alright, so my name is Eli. I just got back from Cuba actually just yesterday. I went on a brigade with the International People's Assembly along with 150 other young people who went to Cuba to see what the conditions in Cuba are like today and what this blockade, this illegal U.S. blockade and sanctions are doing to the Cuban people. While I was there, we toured a town that had recently just gotten a new doctor's office and a new school built. We got to see young people all over the town playing, having a good time at school. We got to meet the doctors, the nurses. We got to see how this community is thriving and using creative resistance to survive under the U.S. blockade. But in the middle of our tour was cut short because the whole town lost power due to fuel shortages caused by the blockade. And it's so sad to see these young Cuban people, young children, getting their education interrupted simply because Cuba cannot buy, cannot purchase fuel from anyone. No one will sell it to them because the U.S. blockade and because the U.S. has put Cuba on the list of state sponsors of terrorism with no evidence whatsoever. So we are here at Jim McGovern's office to ask him, to plead with him, to tell him that his people, his constituents have shown up here. We want you to sign this letter. People in Cuba and Venezuela are dying every day. Every day they cannot get food, they cannot get medicine, they cannot get the fuel and energy they need to sustain themselves. They cannot get clean water. These people are suffering, and it's not because of their government, it's not because of anything they did that these people are innocent. We need the U.S. to lift this illegal blockade, so that's why we're here to ask the representative to sign this letter. He has been strong on sanctions in the past. He has said lots about it. Why is he not here signing this letter, leading other people in Congress to sign this letter. He needs to show up now. His people are here. We want him to sign this letter. Cuba sí, blockade no. Cuba sí, blockade no. Cuba sí, blockade no. Cuba sí, blockade no.
All right.
Hey everybody. For those who don't know me, my name's Aiden. I am an organizer with the Anti-Imperialist Action Committee. A week ago, I was in Washington, D.C. with 3 other members of IAC for the Latin America and Caribbean Policy Forum hosted by our friends in Code Pink and many other organizations. Our Friday was spent meeting with members of Congress and their staff to discuss the potential of our country dropping the sanctions against both Cuba and Venezuela. When we were preparing in the cafeteria, Congressman McGovern met with all of us that morning, and he praised the previous 2 letters he had written and spoke of his reputation of strong opposition towards sanctions. He urged us that now was the time to act to help push his colleagues to condemn the cruel and inhumane sanctions placed on Cuba and Venezuela, and how urgency here was key. We have done as he insisted. We have reached out to our network of friends all around the country to help pressure the representatives to join McGovern in his condemnation. Now it is his time to act by signing on to this new letter. And in less than a week, he seems to be refusing to keep his word. He is turning his back on the pleas of his constituents and what we thought were his ideals. Our experience this past weekend in D.C. left us feeling hopeful and believing there was momentum building towards relieving these sanctions that have taken the lives of so many innocent people. All day, we met with staffers of different representatives who shared in they shared our anger. They shared our fury towards this. By refusing to sign on to this new letter, Congressman McGovern is stifling this momentum towards sanction relief and missing his chance to show us that he is the leading voice of opposing sanctions that he has claimed to be. If he had signed on earlier, as a leader in foreign policy within the House of Representatives, if he had signed on earlier, more people would have felt welcome to sign on. More people would have joined. There would be more signatures on the list. We in the Anti-Imperialist Action Committee, as both activists and constituents of Congressman McGovern, are here today to call on him to keep his word and to sign on to this letter.
All right.
He has to know that we can vote him out. 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 He should know that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you to all the speakers. He should know that we can vote him out. And thank you, everyone, for sharing. Thank you especially, again, to Gloria and to Hector for sharing personal stories about U.S. policies impacting your families directly. We know, as does Congressman McGovern, that we have a moral responsibility to hold the U.S. accountable for its harm. We hope to learn that Congressman McGovern has done the right thing and added his signature to this critical letter. And if he does not, we are prepared to show up here again as early as tomorrow. We ask that if you are available, you join us for another action here tomorrow at 11 a.m.
All right.
Please remember to sign in and scan the QR code to write to the congressman tonight. This fight is far from over. Currently, 1/3 of the global population lives under sanctions. As Representative McGovern said himself, human lives should not be used as a bargaining chip for the U.S.'s political agenda. The U.S. spends billions pursuing imperialist policies while people in the U.S. and right here in Northampton go hungry without health care, without shelter. We are fighting for a world that prioritizes people over profit, and we know this world is possible because Latin America and the Caribbean are leading the way. So thank you all so much for coming out today.
All right.
Does anyone have one more chant that we can close with?
Miranda, he's going to be at the Pride March tomorrow. We should find him there.
Now that's an idea.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the Pride March. Find him.
So please do join us at the Pride March tomorrow at 11 a.m. One more chant to close us out. Cuba sí.
No. sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no.
Hands up Venezuela. Hands
Up Venezuela. Hands up Venezuela. Hands up Venezuela. Hands up Venezuela. All right.
Keep going. That's good.
That looks good.